Hello.
Hi.
It always spooks me when it gives me like the option to live stream because I just see live stream at the top and I'm like, am I doing that? But it's just like, hey, you want to? And I don't.
You know what we should do is figure out if we were to live stream where it goes.
We
we
probably
should just
have-
test it one day.
We probably have to connect it to something like an account somewhere. But
Have you heard Dochi's alter ego? Alter ego.
I think you had mentioned it because I think when we named the podcast, you said that you kept singing it. And I was like, I don't know that song.
I can't get it out of my head. She has this clip of a show she just did. And she's like on stage with her mic and she's like, alter ego. And everybody's doing a callback. Like, you know,
fun.
What is it called?
Like call and repeat.
Response. Yeah. And then she's like, alter. And then she's like, she keeps going. And all day I've been, It like getting pumped up, ready to listen to your story today.
Well, I'm glad you're pumped up because I made my little coffee, refilled my emotional support water. And I was like, I don't even I love you, but I don't even really want to talk to you. I just want to start telling you my story.
You act like we did not talk yet. We did talk yesterday.
You act like that matters. I could still sit here and talk to you for an hour.
You're so right. I'm ready. I'm locked in. Let's do this.
Do you want to?
Let's go.
All right. There are no content warnings for today.
Bet.
I tried to come up with some. If anybody just really wants one, there's sort of a secondhand retelling of a murder that may or may not have happened, but it's told very much in like an urban legend sense. It's not graphic. So I'd say at the most, this story today gets like maybe PG-13.
Oh,
that's it.
Great. Okay. On Alter Ego, we explore where the sacred meets the psychological. We discuss sensitive topics involving trauma and mental health through an educational, ethical lens.
We aim to bring understanding, openness, and curiosity, not sensationalism. Listener discretion is advised. I will say, though, first of all, happy Turkey Trot Eve for all who celebrate, because this episode comes out November 26th.
Whoa.
Yes. And I said I wasn't going to gab with you, but I will ask this question. You're not a turkey trotter. Is that correct?
I am a turkey trot. I respect the trot. I don't trot the trot. You know,
I'm a trotter.
You are a trotter, and I respect that.
I'm a trotter. But, you know, I don't have a family of trotters. I get out alone and I trot. That, you know, that whole thing of like, when you start dating someone, find out if they're the kind of people that run marathons on holidays.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that because right now it's just me, and there's something a little sad to that of like, yeah, it's a holiday. I'm going to go run and then come home and do nothing. So I'm just putting that out. I'm sending that call out there. Let it come back to me.
I just had a moment of realization. You and I will be together when this episode drops. So we're speaking right now to future
no, we
us.
won't.
Yes, we will. Because you're flying in the 24th, no? Am I crazy?
I think I know I leave the 24th, I think.
From here.
Yeah.
Wow. We just missed us.
Yeah, because I will be future us just missed us because I've got everything in there. Yep. That's all right.
Wow. Well, you know, it's still cool. We're still doing this until at the very least the last week of November. We know.
That's true. That's true. This is happening until then. But all right.
I'm very much so looking forward to whatever we're getting into.
All right. So let's talk about it. This is going to be the beginning of a whole series of spiritualism. And I'm very excited to get into that. And I have a lot of things I want to discuss around that. I've already started outlining my next story. I'm like,
fun.
I'm all about it. But I tend to really value chronological order. And so I felt like it was important to start at the genesis of the entire movement.
Okay.
And in order to do that, I need to introduce you to a few people, actually, and we'll get to all of them and their names, but one family in particular, which is the Fox family.
Never heard of them.
I have a feeling this may be one of those times, though, where like we go through this and you're like, oh, no, I know what's happening.
Okay.
But we'll see. If you haven't, that's awesome.
The Fox family. All right.
What about if I say the Fox sisters? Is that dinging any bells anywhere?
Not right now, anyways. But as we know with the Gwen Shamblin thing,
well, I hope it doesn't.
Okay,
this would be really fun if you were like, I have never heard of this. So my next note is, I think most people have heard of the Fox sisters, but now I'm giddy in a whole new way because perhaps that's not true. But even for those who nerd out about a lot of things supernatural like me, there is still so much to their whole story, and there's a lot of meat to dig into. So we're going to explore all of that. So the eldest sister, let's talk family tree. The eldest sister, Anne Leah Fox, they all go by their middle names. Anne Leah Fox, who goes by Leah, is born April 8th, 1813.
2 days
We will
off.
never
She's an
leave.
Aries.
We will never leave the 1800s, I don't think.
Okay.
Maggie Fox is born October 7th. Happy belated at the time of this recording, 1833. And then Catherine Kate Fox is born March 27th, 1837. I think they have some brothers. There may be another sister. We don't really care about them for the sake of the story. Sorry.
So sorry.
Sorry. So these are the ones that we care about for now. In 1847, the Fox family moves into a home in Hydesville, New York. So they're upstate, I think, where you just were.
Oh,
you could have gone and visited. And this house itself becomes a main character in the Fox sister lore. And it's a small wooden home at the edge of Hamlet. And I think it's really funny. This is such a worthless aside, but I'm going to state it up front because I know someone else out there is going to think it. It's really emphasized that this is just like a small little cottage in everything that I have ever read about this house. But it seems to be huge. Because we're going to talk about a basement. We're going to talk about multiple rooms. To me, this house seems very big, but I guess it's very compact. But anyway, allegedly tiny house. And it's kind of that house in the neighborhood. It's got a reputation. It's a little ooky spooky.
Ooh.
And it's known to have some odd noises. And this is way before the Fox family ever moves in. It's got this reputation already. And we'll get to that. But first, we'll continue with the other players in the family tree that I do care about. And those are the parents.
Okay.
The girls were raised by John and Margaret. And they were both working class Methodists. John
was
was
working class Methodist.
We love them. John was a blacksmith and a farmer, and Margaret came from a very devout background. And upstate New York at this time, see, you needed this for your wedding lore when you were talking about Danvers and stuff.
I think it might have been too much for people to even handle.
Probably. They would have been like, you know too much. But upstate New York at this time was actually a hotbed of religious fervor. It was referred to as the burned over district. Have you ever heard this term?
I have not.
It was called the burned over district because it had these waves of Christian revival meetings. And like we've talked about before, this meant a lot of apocalyptic preaching, a lot of hellfire and brimstone, a lot of shouting. But with these waves came also, in between the peaks, right, some other things happening. And a lot of folk beliefs start coming out of the woodwork. A lot of really unique sort of metaphysical ideas, one of which being animal magnetism. Okay, I've heard that term sort of in jest, but do you know what it actually is?
Animal magnetism.
Huh.
The first thing I thought of was that kind of Snow White vibe where animals are just drawn to people.
You're not super off. This actually reminded me a lot of what we were talking about in your case yesterday. Because it's this idea that an invisible natural force, which would be known as like magnetic fluid, flows through all, fluid, that got me too, flows through all living things. And Franz Mesmer, who introduced this theory, believed that illness occurred when this fluid was blocked or imbalanced, right? Like it's sounding a little bit familiar. Yeah. So blocked or imbalanced, and that a practitioner, often called a magnetizer, could restore balance through gestures, touch. So sorry if you heard that sound. Gestures, touch, or the use of magnets. So the magnetism, like you could, like, I guess, kind of draw it out of your body with a magnet.
Mm-hmm.
And by the 1830s to 1850s, these ideas had evolved from kind of fringe European medicine to more of a quasi-religious practice in the US.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And along with, so there's these folk beliefs, things like animal magnetism, and then there's also mystery cures. So this is a time of like literal snake oil salesmen, right? Like, buy this tincture and, you know, this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And this time was so pivotal for everything that's about to happen in this story, because all of these bits in between the hellfire and brimstone was bridging this gap between science and religion and belief. And it's really setting the scene for people to start thinking, what else is out there? Can we talk to it? You know, and then all of a sudden the idea of something like a séance, I'm open, I'm listening, I'm, you know, this sounds totally logical to me. So super duper important that this is all happening. And with that said, not coincidentally at all, the spiritualism movement as we know it actually started in this very district. So spiritualism really started in upstate New York in this district. And it's the same area where even earlier religious movements like Millerism and Mormonism had emerged during the Second Great Awakening. A lot of things happening.
Wow.
Yeah. And obviously, all of these things are very, very different beliefs, but it goes to show that the region itself is really full of all these different people who believe that, well, who believe a lot of things, but who also believe that direct communication with God and angels was possible. And I guess this is what we would call woke nowadays, because this group starts really questioning the Old Testament version of God as well. And they start to say, like, I don't really think he would be that cruel. For instance, I don't think that God would condemn unbaptized infants to an eternity of hellfire. Surely not, right? That version of God, we don't know him.
We don't know him.
We don't know him. And so again, I mean, very, you know, this is some edgy stuff for the time.
What a stark contrast 200 years later.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Emanuel Swedenborg, born 1688 to 1772, and the teachings of Franz Mesmer, who I just mentioned, are really the fathers of spiritualism. And the Fox sisters are going to round it out. But Swedenborg came first. So he was ahead of even Mesmer, and he claimed to communicate with spirits while he was awake. And he even described the spirit world that he saw in very great detail. And he claimed that there was not a singular heaven and a singular hell, but rather a hierarchy of heavens and hells, which the way I was reading it, I'm picturing sort of like Dante's Inferno, except that just like not all levels of terrible, but just like all different levels of heaven, all different levels of hell. And he also described what to me sounds a lot like voodoo, which was saying that spirits are intermediates between God and humans. And so sometimes the divine might use them as a means of communication. Interestingly, though, he was actually very outspoken about warning people, do not seek out spirit contact. Don't try to talk to them.
No Ouija boards.
Like, it might be possible. I'm doing it, but like, don't do it.
Okay. It's dangerous is what the message is.
And I don't know that he ever said explicitly there's danger, but he just was very much like, we don't need to do that.
Okay.
Not surprisingly, it had the complete adverse effect right?
Yeah.
Where everyone's like, so how do we do it?
Mm-hmm.
So Mesmer, going back to him briefly, father of mesmerism, brought hypnosis and hypnotism to the forefront of all of these fringe beliefs. And so, being mesmerized, that comes from this man. So practitioners of mesmerism obviously wanted to be entertaining while doing this for audiences, but they also demonstrated that it was a method for contact with the divine. So different, obviously, than how we would be using it today. But fun fact here for the ladies, very popular women leading this. The most popular trance lecturer prior to the American Civil War was a woman named Cora L.V. Scott. And she was incredibly successful. One, because she was a babe. And two, folks, especially men in her audience, were fascinated by how girlish and coquettish she was while speaking about spirits and spiritualism. I guess this was like, wow, beauty and brains. We can't comprehend it.
It feels almost burlesque, but not burlesque.
But the same idea, right? Of like putting on this show and like no one's getting
Yes.
naked, but everyone's like, wow, I am so
Tranced.
invested. Yeah. And and then there was Asha W. Prague in Vermont. And she had nearly died at age 20 from rheumatic fever because, people do be dying in these times. But she had a pretty miraculous recovery, and she credited that recovery to spirits. So she became a very popular trance lecturer until her death in 1861. So with all of this happening in the very district that the girls are living in, it makes sense that they're probably being a little bit influenced, but they're probably also seeing it and curious about it and whatever. And then this is happening at home. Margaret, mom, while very devout, was also my people because she had a belief that there were signs and that dreams meant something and there were no coincidences, So the girls don't necessarily grow up with ghost stories or folklore or going to see mesmerizing acts or trances, but they did grow up hearing that there was a veil between this world and the next and that it could be very thin. And we talked about this, of course, in your sleepwalking story, which is why it's so funny that the next note in my story is that she had these beliefs partly because her grandmother, so the girl's great-grandmother, was a somnambulist, a sleepwalker.
Somnambulism.
Yeah. And while sleepwalking, she would attend phantom funerals of people who were still alive in real life, but were having funerals in this thin veil area and could describe every detail when she was like awake again, details that would eventually come true at their actual
funeral.
Yeah. And they have an aunt, Elizabeth Higgins, who in a dream saw her own tombstone and could read the inscripted dates and did in fact wind up dying on the date that she claimed to have seen in the dream.
My God.
I want these people to be my neighbors.
Yes. Calling that in.
Yes. So now they're in this house. I've set the scene, I hope. And they're in this house that the neighbors say is like a little creepy. And I don't know if they were necessarily throwing the word haunted around, but they did tell stories about the odd noises I mentioned at the top, because allegedly there was a peddler that had vanished many years before after visiting the property. There was even a story that perhaps he was murdered by the guy who had lived in the house. His name would later be found as Bell, Bell, and we can put a pin in that piece of this. But between this chatter and the general vibe of this district that they're in, their mom's belief, the conversations that they usually had as a family around religion and heaven and moral conduct and, regular dinner topics, it could be easy for little girls to feel a little imaginative and curious.
Of course.
Perhaps. Maybe. So about a year into living in this creepy little noisy house, the family is around the hearth one night, having a very Norman Rockwell sort of evening like they normally do, probably talking about heaven. And they begin hearing raps that seem to be coming from inside the walls. This is March 31st, 1848. If I heard taps and knocks coming from inside of my walls, I'm calling an exterminator. Because to me, I have mice or creatures or
Squirrel.
something, gremlins, but like there's an animal in my house. But the girls instead take this and pretty quickly start to tease these knocks, suggesting that perhaps they're coming from spirits and maybe they can even answer questions. And the tappings had been happening up to this point, but this night in particular, it was just non-stop. So Margaret, the mom, suggested that perhaps the window sashes had come loose and were making sounds. So John goes up to shake them and see if they were loose. And one of the girls observes that, gosh, Dad, when you're shaking that, it sounds like something is almost responding. So there's a signed testimony that the mom gives later. And something that she said stood out to me. She says, "We heard footsteps in the pantry and walking downstairs. We could not rest. And I then concluded that the house must be haunted by some unhappy, restless spirit. I had often heard of such things, but had never witnessed anything of the kind that I could not account for before." I love that she went straight to ghosts, just immediately. And at this point, it's really just Kate and Maggie, the two younger sisters, because Leah, she's out of the house. She's married to her first husband.
Okay.
But Kate, the youngest, she's actually mentioned in this same signed testimony. She's a pretty key player here. And this is a lengthier quote, but it's a good one. She says, "My youngest child, Kathy," Kate, said, "Mr. Splitfoot, do as I do," clapping her hands. The sound instantly followed her with the same number of raps. When she stopped, the sound ceased for a short time. Then Margaretta, Maggie, said, "No, sport, do just as I do. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, striking one hand against the other at the same time, and the raps came as before. She was afraid to repeat them. Then Kate said in her childish simplicity, "Oh, Mother, I know what it is. Tomorrow is April Fool Day, and it is somebody trying to fool us." I then thought I could put a test no one in the place could answer. I asked the noise to rap my different children's ages successively. Instantly, each one of my children's ages was given correctly, pausing between them sufficiently long to individualize them until the 7th, at which a longer pause was made, and then 3 more emphatic raps were given, corresponding to the age of the little one that died, which was my youngest child. Because she thought, okay, if it is someone,
This is impossible to answer.
they won't know that.
Yeah.
They won't know that I lost a child.
Wow.
So she goes on to explain that through the rapping, she determined it was not a human but a spirit, which means something very different to me than it seemed to mean to her. Because, I mean, if you even know a little bit about like Ouija boards, right? If you say, "Were you human?" and it says no, you best be closing that session up.
Yeah. Bad news bears.
Yeah. But she went with that and that it was an injured spirit. And that when she asked if it was injured, that the yes it gave was so emphatic that the house trembled. Yeah, that's like the Hulk knocking on your door.
Yeah.
And that the spirit was injured in that very house and buried in the cellar. She even asked if he would keep rapping if they pulled in a neighbor, and it said yes. And a woman was brought in, and it scared her because it answered her age correctly and whatever she and her husband asked it.
Whoa.
I love the purring coming from your
can you
side
hear
of it.
her?
It's so sweet. But so this is now, they're like, okay, don't leave, spooky ghost guy. I'm gonna go get my friend. And so pull in a neighbor. And I can't even have an issue with this part of the story, because if someone pulled me in and said, "There's a weird ghost answering us with knocks," I would be like, "Let's go."
And I'm going to bring, and you would bring me, I would hope.
Yes, I would be like, I am so there. Hold on. I'm not dressed. It doesn't matter. I'm over.
No shoes. We're heading over right now.
Does not matter. And remember the time, right? Like, you're not interrupting anybody watching The Bachelor. You know what I mean? Everyone's just around their hearth. And so more neighbors are brought in. And it was immediately like any sleepover that a young teen has ever attended, especially a young girl, in which all of a sudden you're engaged in like casual witchcraft, right?
Right.
Because the questions pivoted to the murder, this rumor, right? This story that's always existed in this little area of, were you murdered? Were you a peddler? Were you killed by the person that lived here?
Oh, right.
Which, by the way, was on a Tuesday night at midnight via having his throat cut with a butcher's knife. That's all the things they get out of this, like, yes or no wrapping stuff.
Wow.
So you can imagine how long they're there, like, asking to get to something like that. And there's more. They learn through these yes and no's and all the things that his body was taking through the it must be like sort of the kitchen area, down the stairway, and that it was buried 10 feet below the surface on the ground. And he was murdered for his money, $500. And they brought in more neighbors. People are fishing in the creek at this point. It's like the next day. People are fishing in the creek, random ass people, and they're like, hey, come witness our ghost.
Oh, I'm kind of jealous, to be honest. I'm like, oh, I want to show people my ghost in my house.
I want someone to come get me and tell me that they've got something weird happening in their house. And at this point, the kids are like, we're leaving. The kids leave the house because there were over like 100 people in their home at one point. But the fact that the kids left the house, I want to say that out loud. I want to put a pin in that.
Okay.
And we're going to circle back much later on, but they left. So all these adults, and they're engaged in their little occult party, did try to dig in the cellar, because how could you not? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
someone
10
tells you
feet
that they're
deep.
buried under there.
Of course.
Let's go.
I'm digging.
Allegedly, they get about 5 feet down before finding a plank, charcoal, quicklime, some hair, and some bones.
Oh, so not even 10 feet.
Not even 10 feet, but they couldn't dig further because of the season. Apparently there was like water coming in at that point, so they needed to wait until it was like drier or something like that.
That's fair.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe they needed better foundation. I don't know what's happening in the 1800s. But don't worry, we'll come back to this about 56 years later, so just hang tight.
Okay.
So again, they're asking a lot of yes or no questions, saying, knock once for yes, twice for no kind of thing. And this is still very popular on, ghost hunting shows,
Yeah, totally.
By mid 1848, people are hearing about this. I mean, you can imagine how quickly gossip travels at this time. And also 100 people were already like witness to this.
Yeah.
So people are curious and people want to witness it for themselves. Community members want to see it. And they do. The girls are asking questions and seemingly having very intelligent conversations with what they're referring to as spirit. But they're also calling this spirit Mr. Splitfoot. I don't know if you caught that in the signed testimony earlier. So that's a nickname for the devil.
Oh, did they know that or what?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a choice.
So apparently the spirit had claimed to be a peddler, and he did give a name. He called himself Charles B. Rosina, who had been murdered 5 years earlier, whose body was still in the cellar. But I, like you, thought they seemed pretty chill, thinking that this is the devil that they're talking to. So I dug a little deeper. I dug about 5 feet. And in the mid-19th century in upstate New York, where we are, Mr. Splitfoot was a folklore nickname for the devil. Very similar to calling him like Old Scratch.
Okay.
And not in like a scary biblical devil kind of way, but how you would refer to him if you were telling a joke or like a ghost story around the campfire, or if you were teaching someone about a superstition, like don't tempt Mr. Splitfoot. So it was like playful cautionary language for kids almost.
Yeah. Feels very much so not like the person who would be responsible for dragging you to hell. More so just someone who will come in and say, that's not something that you should do. It feels like very much more playful than eternal condemnation.
Yeah. Fire forever. Skin melting off your body. Yeah. He's like fun cartoon devil.
Yeah. It's like a scary carnival fun house instead of actual hell,
It's like how we might call a ghost Casper.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. It's just like, it's cutesy, it's anecdotal, it's culturally significant enough that you get the reference. It's like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the raps do eventually seemed to turn into a full-fledged haunting.
Oh.
And the sound of a struggle can be heard in the night. The gurgling of a throat, perhaps cut with a knife.
Yeah.
The sound of a body being dragged across the room. And thankfully, something finally makes sense because the family can't take it any longer and they move out.
Oh.
Yeah. Because I'm like, you guys, I mean, look, I'd be having fun too. It's like having a fun roommate that you never have to worry about cleaning up after, but you seem very chill with everything. So when it did get to this point of like incessant, actually scary events, they pieced out. But they pieced out and they split up. So the two youngest, Kate and Maggie, were sent to Rochester. And Kate goes to her sister Leah's house. Maggie goes to her brother David's house. And the rapping and knocking noises follow them both.
Oh, shit.
And there were many witnesses. So Calvin Brown, who would eventually become Leah's second husband, and not surprisingly, because he was living in the same house as her, but the rapping had evolved to like a poltergeist attachment.
You know, I love a poltergeist story.
We love a noisy ghost. Things were being thrown at poor Calvin.
Oh my God.
Blocks of wood were found scattered in the rooms and would even have sentences on them sometimes. What? And Leah actually wrote in 1885 this quote, "No earthly power could relieve us. While on our knees, pins would be stuck into different parts of our persons. Mother's cap would be removed from her head, her comb jerked out of her hair, and every conceivable thing to annoy us. The spirits carried on the manifestations on the very peak of the roof. It sounded like the frequent discharge of heavy artillery. It was stated to us the next day that the sounds were heard a mile away. We feared the roof would fall in upon us."
That sounds pretty terrorizing.
Yeah, someone the next day was like, "Hey, what's good? I heard something at your house. By the way, I live a mile from you."
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a fish story, you know, a fisherman.
Yeah, like
kind of sensation.
I was pretty with you, and now I'm like, it sounds like nonstop gunfire is happening on your roof, and people can hear this a mile away. Like, what's going? Okay, all right, but listen. Okay, but this story takes an unexpected, maybe not unexpected, religious turn. A friend was visiting and remembered that Leah's brother David had conversed with the ghost in their childhood home by using the alphabet. And basically, it's like an invisible, inefficient Ouija board. There are two paranormal investigators right now that I think are total fraudsters, and they love to do this. I'm not even going to mention their names, but they love to do this of like, they'll go through it. What's your name? A, B, C. And they'll hear like a sound. Okay, great. Starts with C. A, B, C. And they keep going until they get a name. And so that's kind of what they were doing. So by going through the alphabet, the spirit spells out this message. I can't even imagine how inefficient this would be. This would take forever. It says, "Dear friends, you must proclaim this truth to the world. This is the dawning of a new era. You must not try to conceal it any longer. When you do your duty, God will protect you and good spirits will watch over you."
That took 2 weeks.
Can you imagine? And be like, "Oh my God, wait, I spelled something wrong. Hold on. This isn't making any sense." Like, it would take forever.
Also, I would imagine that even a spirit entity, ghost, poltergeist, you know, probably wants to be more efficient with their words. And if it makes me chuckle that it's like, "Dear friends," and it's like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, real formal. And this is not incredibly long before, but still before Ouija boards were made. But you would still think, because that was 1890, so we're almost there. But you would still think that they might be like, I don't know, maybe there's like a faster way. Maybe we can, I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, I guess if they had figured out a faster way, they would have invented Ouija boards. What do I know? But it just seems like, to your point, weeks would have to go by. I mean, that's forever. But interesting, right? Because again, it's this idea that this ghost is almost like an angel, right? Sort of giving this declaration message from God, as opposed to, "Hey, I'm a dead peddler in your cellar. Can you come get me and put me to rest?"
Very different message. Yeah.
Yeah, but no one seems to.
Nobody questioned that?
No, I guess they're just like, this is a different one.
They switched it up? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess they're just going with it like, this is somebody else.
Okay.
So I guess because the entity had finally shared this message, he was at peace. So communication was really pouring in. Tables are rocking, guitars are being strummed, touching is experienced, but it's all like very positive and like woo-woo now, as opposed to like, hey, I'm throwing blocks at your head.
So once they received the message successfully, it subsided is what happened.
I mean, still happening, but it's more like, how cute, you strummed a guitar.
As volatile, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not being pricked by pins anymore.
Yeah, that sounds pretty disturbing.
And a Quaker couple that were friends of the family, Amy and Isaac Post, are curious. They have the girls over and I guess ask them to try to talk to the spirit there. And it works in their home too. They're blown away, immediately believe. So they tell their radical Quaker friends about it, and this fascination and obsession with the girls who seem to be able to communicate with the dead is set ablaze. And most of the biggest believers and who would really become the core following of spiritualism as a whole are radical Quakers, mostly because they're very uncomfortable with mainstream churches at this time because they were doing very little to nothing at all to fight slavery, and they didn't care about the women's suffrage movement. And Sprague, who I mentioned earlier, was very popular. She was an abolitionist and an advocate of women's rights. So this sort of overlap was always happening. It was like, wow, you're so cool. You talk to spirits and also you want to be able to vote.
Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah. Like, I don't know that I see the direct correlation, but I mean, I am interested in all those things, you know?
Absolutely.
And so now, as all good, pure, incredible things tend to do, an opportunity was realized, and the girls decided that they should really be making some money off of this.
Ah, we love entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So on November 14th, 1849, the Fox sisters put on their first show, basically, at Corinthian Hall in Rochester. See, you were just all over this area. You had no idea.
This is only encouraging me to go back with this newfound information.
We should go and be like, Maggie, if it's you, give me one knock.
Here, I brought this thing called a Ouija board. They didn't have them around whenever you were alive.
Yeah, miss me with that. I'd rather be asking to knock on a wall. So they performed to a very large paying audience.
Ooh.
And their older sister, Leah, becomes sort of like their momager. So she takes over that role very quickly. She's like, yes. Let's make you stars, right?
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, I mean, this show was a hit. They're in this huge concert hall and they're sitting on stage. I picture like the way that we go to see podcasts live now.
Yeah.
Except that instead of telling a story, they're just up there going, is anyone with us? Knock once. And everyone's very quiet. And there's like a knock that comes and everyone's like, it's just that.
Oh, that
all
is
night long.
Absolutely. And then I almost said type. It's like they spell out hello.
Yes.
And then we're there for hours. It's like we get like one good word.
I hope that if we ever get popular enough that we can tour, that's actually all our live show is us just asking for raps and taps all night.
Really what you're doing right now is manifesting.
Yes.
And this is in our future.
This is actually a made up story about Jerry and I.
What we're going to be doing.
But people are instant believers. I mean, if anybody showed up that night thinking like, let's see what these girls are doing, they walked away. I mean, minds blown, agape, blown away.
I know that this is not the same thing, but I cannot not say all I have is Chris Angel Mind Freak in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this feels so like that.
Or like the Long Island Medium.
For yes, that specific sensation. This was like the OG sensational metaphysical stuff.
Well, especially of Chris Angel, because when he first got started, not that I know anything about him because he did date Holly Madison, who I know too much about. He really, when he started out, he wanted people to believe that he truly he was not a magician. He was able to levitate. He was a supernatural person.
I would say it took me too long to realize that what he was doing was not quote unquote real. Do you know what I mean? Like
He's
quote
a
quote
fantastic
believed.
performer.
Yeah. Like
Like
as a young kid, oh yeah.
I don't think he's
So
a
into
nice
it.
person, and he sounds like a terrible partner, but I would go see him in Vegas. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It seems like a lot of fun. But I mean, overnight, they're like renowned as mediums in a time where no one was known as that. So they're really forging a path. And so they begin holding seances for hundreds of paying people. And
So they were performing seances in public on a stage that they did not practice or know or do in private. Or okay.
Okay. And these seances were silly, because what do you think people were asking the girls to get insight into?
Like love and like, yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. Matters of the heart mostly. And also the state of railway stocks.
Why would you not?
Yeah, basically today's equivalent of like, what are the winning lottery numbers? And is Chris going to propose to me? Yeah, a lot of that stuff. And of course, seances really took off because people would be convinced that they could feel the spirit in the room.
Oh.
They would hear a rapping sound and like cry out that they had been touched.
Oh, I love this shit.
It's really working. So they have their older sister as their manager, but they also acquire kind of a mentor, and his name is Horace Greeley. He's a prominent publisher. So I guess he had some high standing in the community, especially because he's also a politician.
Oh. Interesting.
And so he was able to basically elevate their social standings and the circles in which they were kind of hanging out in.
Wow.
So he's not so much like taking care of them. He's just sort of inserting himself into their lives and elevating their status. But it's at this point that because of all the, sort of schmoozing that they're doing, they do begin to drink a lot of wine.
During the shows or just in general?
Just in general. And, they're at this point like young ladies. They're both kind of in their early 20s and they're drinking wine.
Who's not drinking a lot of wine in their early 20s?
Drinking a lot of wine. In the 1800s, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
seances and alcohol.
You can't drink water.
You can't vote.
Wine it is.
So 2 years into this whole ordeal, people finally start kind of murmuring some skepticism. But this is also when really wealthy and borderline celebrity, if you will, folks are also in the audience. So in 1850, you kind of have this juxtaposition of, look at all these, quote unquote famous people, if you will, like really high socialites. And then this little group that's like, but I don't really buy it. So in 1850, a handful of people began to speak out against them, including a physician and a reverend. And the reverend wrote in the New York Tribune that the girls were just cracking their toe joints.
Wait, that was the rapping?
He's saying that they're cracking their toe joints loudly enough that it could be heard even in such a big auditorium. That same year, investigators from the University of Buffalo came out saying the same thing.
What?
That the knocks were happening by cracking different joints and that they could like kind of prevent the cracking if they had cushions under their feet. So I guess if they were like in a situation where they were confronted, it would be easy not to make the sound if they didn't want to make the sound. And things get worse from here because in 1851, Mrs. Norman Culver, related to the girls somehow, it wasn't very clear. She admits, allegedly, that she actually helped the girls with this fraud because she would touch them during seances and indicate when the raps would be made.
And so this is the suspected thing, is that it is joints popping.
This is what we're going with.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And she even claimed that the girls confessed to her that they snapped their toes and could produce the sounds with their knees and their ankles. But to be honest with you, I feel like she may have just wanted to be involved and was maybe hoping for a payout because when she comes forward with this, it's not like earth-shattering revelation stuff. It's what has already been said about them. It's just scandalous in the fact that she's saying like, yes, I can confirm that that's the truth. So I'm a little bit like, I acknowledge you, I see you, but I'm just going to put you over here.
You haven't brought any new content to the table.
Yeah. Like
Mm-hmm.
go over there. But because I'm also thinking, like, I don't know why you would need to tap them, because if they're the ones asking the questions, like,
They know.
right?
Yeah.
Like, if they're faking it, they know when they're going to do
Why would
that.
you know any better than they would? They can hear.
Yeah, but whatever. Maybe it was more specific, right? Maybe it's like, we're gonna tap this lady on the arm, and so at that time you need to. I don't know. But just as an aside, in the background of this storyline is dozens and then hundreds of people looking at the Fox sisters and going, I could do that. And suddenly, spiritualism is not just a core following of Quakers, it is a movement. This thing blows up. So while they still had a devout following, things for them are beginning to fall apart. Charles Grafton Page, a patent examiner, was devoting his life to detecting fraud amongst like science and this sort of community. He had actually written a book all about debunking fraudulent claims about science called Psychomancy, which awesome. Psychomancy, written in 1853. So when he decided to look into the sisters' claims, he stated that the raps were coming from beneath the girls' long dresses.
Oh, okay. I
The
could
knocks
get
are coming from inside the house.
I could get down with that more than the joints, I think.
Well, and it's because it could be joints beneath their long dresses. It could be devices beneath their long dresses. But for the same reason that it's easier to get behind, it's also like a little bit of a cop-out in the sense that, let's say that that's absolutely what's happening. Let's say they've got some sort of like knick-knack, paddywhack thing going on under there that they can clickety-click. You can't just lift up a woman's dress in the 1800s.
And like, check. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess because of that, skeptics needed to get creative.
Oh, that is such a cop-out. Okay. I see. Yeah.
But the skeptics did get creative because in 1852, Maggie met Elisha Kane, an Arctic explorer. Very cool. And he was also convinced that the sisters were engaged in fraud. So now someone within the family is like, hey, that's pretty messed up.
Whoa.
But he blamed Leah. So this is some like juicy drama, right? That now you have this brother-in-law who is literally dating one of the fraudsters and is going to marry her. And he's going, I think you're full of shit, but I don't blame you, babe. I blame your toxic older sister.
Sister is the problem.
He blamed Leah, their momager, their manager, and wanted to break Maggie away from her because, again, he thought that this is like a toxic older sister. So Kane married Maggie despite her questionable morals, and she converted to the Roman Catholic faith at the time of their marriage. Her husband passed 5 years later. She immediately returns to her activities as a medium. So she
stopped
took a little break,
doing it while she was married?
took a little break, went back to it.
Okay.
That same year, 1857, the Boston Courier set up a prize of $500 to any medium who could demonstrate a paranormal ability to their committee and basically convince them. Very Penn and Teller, right? Very like, convince us and we'll say you're a good magician. And in case you're curious, because $500 had also come up before, right? With like, that's how much the peddler had. Oh, today in today's money, that's $15,548.97.
Okay.
So you can
quite
imagine.
a good chunk of change.
Yeah, you can imagine that these money-hungry fraudsters, I mean, incredibly gifted mediums, were itching to win this money. That's a huge payout. But I also have a feeling that this group was never worried about having to actually cut that check because they were confident that they wouldn't be convinced. Because how do you you know what I mean? So the girls were in a little bit of a pinch for cash at this time and also struggling with some pretty significant growing alcohol issues. So the Fox sisters, surprise, surprise, made an attempt. They need that money pretty bad. And the magician John Wyman, who was on the committee to like be convinced, said, yeah, they're doing weird shit with their foot bones. You fail. One seance sitter literally said that she felt pulsations in Maggie's feet, like just sitting near her, could like feel what was happening. But adding to the confusion, William Crookes, unfortunate last name, but William Crookes,
seriously.
a prominent physicist, examined Kate and said the raps were genuine and she was not using any part of her body to produce the sounds. But not surprisingly, people thought that he was kind of like a gullible quack, so they didn't really spend too much time there.
Okay.
Now, Houdini also investigated the sisters.
Houdini.
But I'm going to talk about him next week because there's a lot to talk about with him and his whole dedication to uncovering fraud. But not surprisingly, he also thought that they were complete scammers. Right in the midst of this rise, a little war you may have heard of happened, the Civil War. 1861.
I do believe I've heard a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, with the Civil War, so much death. The actual number ranges anywhere from 620,000 to 698,000 people. Yeah. So hundreds of thousands of families were watching their husbands and fathers and brothers leave and never come back. So even those who had been like pretty aloof during this whole movement suddenly found themselves very devout, right? They wanted to really believe in this. Mary Todd Lincoln, Sarah Winchester, right? Wealthy, social, societal women. And the opposite. We're all chasing the same thing, closure. They all wanted one last opportunity to talk to them, to say goodbye, to make sure they were at peace, right? I mean, you can't blame anyone for how they tried to find any sort of consolation in death. And people like the Fox sisters claimed that they could offer that closure. So, it takes a little bit of a turn. It kind of goes from entertainment to like, it's sort of like, yeah, are you scamming us for fun? Are you scamming us for exploitation? Like, yeah, you took my money, but I was entertained versus,
Yeah.
So over all of these many years, Kate and Maggie did develop pretty severe alcoholism. And much later in 1888, they would actually have a really big fight with Leah and other leading spiritualists. It was sort of like an intervention in which they confronted Kate specifically about drinking too much to even be able to take care of her children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you hear my hip just pop just then?
I thought it was a ghost.
It was a wrap.
This was also the same time that Maggie was contemplating returning to the Roman Catholic faith because she was convinced that her abilities were evil.
Oh, whoa. Okay. Huge turnaround there. Okay. Okay.
That also kind of slowed me down because I'm like, well, you think that what you're able to do, not what you're doing, right? Not like, oh, I'm exploiting people, that's evil, but I'm able to talk to the dead, that's a problem. Yeah, I don't.
Well, if she really thinks she can talk to the dead, then she's not committing fraud,
Right.
That's the point.
Where do you put that? I'm like, I don't know. So, but wait, there's more. Because also in 1888, again, still before the Ouija board, just in case anybody's keeping up, the pair traveled to NYC, where a reporter offered them $1,500, equivalent to $51,154,
Oh, my God.
if they would finally expose the fraud and just confess. Just tell us for once and for all, how'd you do it? How do you do it? How do you make the sounds? But he had to have the exclusive. So I will give you this money, but I get to break the story. And at this point, they're really hurting for money. Nobody's coming to see them anymore. They've got bills piling up. They need
Bad
to buy booze.
reputation at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, and they've got an addiction that they need to pay for. And so Maggie decides she's going to do it. So on October 21st, 1888, she went to the New York Academy of Music and told 2,000 people that she had lied, and she demonstrated how she could produce the sounds, and it was toe cracking.
Oh my God. It was toe cracking? I'm going to be trying to crack my toes later.
Crack them loud enough to be heard in
mean?
an auditorium.
You should get that checked out medically. That's not supposed to be happening.
Well, I mean, this wasn't like a time of health. You know what I mean?
I'm trying it right now up against my desk. Oh,
Was that a crack
that's my
or
toe.
just you not?
I'm like, that's my toes. This is so funny.
But not so loud that 2,000 people could hear it.
No. Okay, well.
But the story still doesn't end there.
Convinced. Okay.
Story's not over. Because she later recants.
Oh, they did it for the money, obviously.
She said In November, I put 1989. Sorry. In November 1889.
And she defied all odds by
She came back from the grave and said, aha, I told you. In November 1889, she says, I only confessed because I needed the money.
Yeah, that's a pretty good reason to. I mean, there's really no other than your reputation, whatever. It's like, yeah, well, I need 50 grand.
So did she also coincidentally know how to crack her toes really loud? Because
Or
she
was
did
she
still
in
demonstrate
cahoots
it.
with the spirit and said, "Hey, yo, spirit, before we go, I have to have $50,000. Help me out while I do this." You know. So
Do you
I
know,
mean,
in all my years of being really obsessed with this story, I've never once thought that maybe she just had some teamwork ever.
well, you would imagine that at that point she's done so much communicating for the ghost. She's like, "Hey, can you, meet
For
me
multiple
halfway?"
ghosts.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you go.
I like that theory. I do like that theory. But you're the only one that had it because she tried to return to spiritualism and she just never got the audience back.
It never came back. Wow.
So Kate would later die at her home in July of 1892, post Ouija board for anybody keeping up. And not even a year later, Maggie did pass from alcoholism. She was living on charity in a small home, and she was taken to the home of a fellow spiritualist, Emily Brubels, in Brooklyn, where she passed March 8th. But we still aren't done because now it's been, 54 years later, like I said. So don't forget, I put a pin in our bone finding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take the pin out. We're there. In 1904, bones are found in the childhood home that started it all after a false wall fell down.
Not even the basement.
The false wall would later be deemed an expansion of foundation, not the concealment of a secret grave, but regardless, weird. The Boston Journal published a story about it, claiming that it was the body of the peddler. But there is much speculation that this was a practical joke and the bones were a mix of bones, including like chicken bones. But a few years after that, reports came out that a peddler's tin box had also been found. But because original accounts don't seem to mention it, some people don't believe that they actually found it with the bones. But if you're curious, the remains and the tin box are in the Lilydale Museum, in case anyone wants to visit them.
Where is that? In New York?
I believe so. So to kind of pull all of these pieces together, and then we'll debrief.
I can't wait.
This is a time of a lot of death. This general time in history, right?
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
before the Civil War, it's a lot of death. They had siblings that had died young, right? They lost a brother at 3. And this is also a time of open caskets, home rituals, death photography, right? Mourning rituals, a lot of death, but also fear and fascination and spiritual anxiety and kind of political unrest. And the thing that I kept coming back to was, with all of that said, it would be very easy to go, come on, the kids were being kids. And they were like, look at us tricking the adults. But the kids had allegedly left the house when 100 people were in their home witnessing all the weird sounds and stuff.
Oh, right. They weren't there.
They left. They were like, this is overwhelming and I'm overstimulated. Goodbye.
And we don't think that they could have been like outside the house making the sounds?
Well, here's the thing. They could have. It could have been that one of the 100 people inside was like, I'm gonna make a sound, right? I don't know, but I will just say they weren't there supposedly. Maggie did later admit that when they were young, they would tie an apple to a string and move the string up and down, causing the apple to bump on the floor and drop the apple on the floor. And their mom would hear this, but didn't suspect them of being capable of such a trick at a young age. So you have some pretty blatant confessions, but then you also have sort of dealing with, I think I need to convert to Catholicism because I think my ability to talk to the dead is evil, but also, yep, I'm just cracking my toe joints. But I mean, the way the story ends is that they were fraudsters, they were committing fraud, they started spiritualism. by being fraudulent, and that's such a wild start. But I feel like there's just enough little bits that it's like,
Why can't it be both? That's where I land. I feel like why couldn't they have experienced or been involved in things that were unexplainable or maybe supernatural, and then they ran with it?
And for those like me who believe in poltergeists, a lot of times kids that experience poltergeists are usually going through puberty because it's just a lot of hormonal
Emotionally
shifts,
tumultuous.
emotion, a lot of emotional stuff. And so it's a big energy draw to kind of push all of this out through your body. Maybe very mesmerism, right? This idea of like animal magnetism. I have all this like invisible goo inside me. And I can create a ghost, and I don't know. I don't think that things were so loud that people heard them a mile away.
Right.
But I also don't necessarily believe that all the players in this story were just blatantly lying.
Yeah, I feel like this is a combination of, it's not filet à deux, but what is the other word for like a collective, not a collective delusion, but whenever you're in a group of people and you see like a car accident and everyone, like, I guess I'm mixing up two different things here, but one, obviously our brains do weird things to what we see, hear, feel, sense, and understand in our memories. And then the other thought I was having simultaneously is, I guess, adjacent to like a collective delusion, but there's another word for it that I can't think of right now that I'm sure will come to me just as soon as we stop recording. But it's like this concept that,
isn't it? And what happened with like the dancing?
Well, I have experienced this. If like okay, to kind of circle it back to earlier, whenever you were talking, is this, for example, when you're in church, say you're in church, you're listening to this music, you get this sensation. Some people may say it's the Holy Spirit. Some people may go to a Coldplay concert and feel the exact same thing. This specific word for this shared sensation as a collective whole, a big group experience that you have together that feels spiritual and moving, and your hair stands up on the back of your neck kind of feeling, That's what I'm talking about. Of like this group and collective experience where you all feel this sensation and this supernatural, beyond human thing happening.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about whenever you were saying like the 100 people in the house thing. I was like, I can't imagine what is going on. So when you have like a big group of people and when you're all experiencing a collective sensation, and then it kind of like stacks on itself. And that's how you get into what I would imagine it could escalate to a point of like shared delusion, but I mean, I've experienced that in smaller settings all the way to like the big, large spaces and settings, where you're all experiencing something that feels so unexplainable and.
And I think too, if you're primed to want to experience something, it's very easy to then do that, right? Like if I paid good money to sit with 100 strangers and watch two girls on stage call a spirit in, I'm locked in and I want it to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very different than someone sitting there like, this is such crap, right? Because we're going to walk away with two different experiences. I'm going to be like, I don't know. I feel like I heard that thing and that was pretty weird. And like, I definitely felt like it got a little colder. And the person next to me is going to be like, literally nothing happened.
Someone opened the door. It let in a cool draft. This is all logical. Yeah. Well, then it kind of circles it back around because say, and this is just a curiosity I have, is that if you have a collective whole group of people who are equally contributing to some sort of like energy of believing, then does that voluntarily manifest something into existence?
Yeah, it actually creates that energy. Yeah, I don't know.
I am so fascinated by poltergeists. And all I'm saying is energy can't be destroyed.
It has to go somewhere.
It's gotta go somewhere.
It has to bop around somehow. But that, I think, to your point of like, ¿por qué no los dos? If their house was haunted, and who's to say it wasn't? You're going to then take that experience into every next step of your life. Like
Absolutely.
that house that I lived in that was so haunted that you came to. Like,
That's all I've been thinking about.
yeah, you will not tell me that the things that I experienced in that house, the things that you and I experienced in that house were coincidence or fluke or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's also me saying I had that experience. I won't change my mind.
Yeah.
And I think that is exactly why this story is so juicy, because it's no different than a faith in God. If you believe in something unseen, you believe in something unseen. And oftentimes it's going to be because of a very personal experience that you have had. And that may be for someone on their knees crying out, feeling like they are overcome by the Holy Spirit. It could be because someone sees the Hat Man when they're in a state of sleep paralysis. It could be because they know
prayer
that
was answered.
Yeah, or there's a spirit that they see, over their bed at night, and they know that it's protective, but they don't know who it is. Or, like you have some sort of experience that either you go, okay, all right, or not. And I think that's exactly why no one will ever have to write a check to someone for being convinced of something they don't believe is real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could set up a similar panel and say, convince me of God. How do you do that?
Right.
Convince me that a Duquesne can do anything. How do you do that? But for the people that believe it and have experienced what they attribute to that, how do you not believe it?
What do you think? How do you feel? I can only assume, and you've been kind of answering that the whole time a little bit, but where do you feel like you kind of land softly?
Have often turned this one over in my mind, and I kind of oscillate here, because on the one hand, I am of the belief that just like, okay, we all have a brain. We all use our brain very differently. I'm very right-brained. I don't understand math. I'm not left-brained at all. I have an actual learning disorder when it comes to math. But there are people that can do really, really complex mental math in their head. And it doesn't make them supernatural. It means that they can access a part of their brain that I can't. And I think in the same way, we all have a part of our brain that, if we can tap into it, allows us to communicate with things beyond the veil. But we don't all tap into it. We don't all want to. We don't all know how to. I think most kids do, because I think they're all just so squishy and open that they don't know to close any doors.
Right.
Right? I didn't mean to close my math door, but I did. But I think that if you leave the door open enough, anybody could communicate. But I also, all right, this is gonna get real granola, because I also think if you have the ability to communicate, I'm not saying that these girls did, but I do think that if you exploit that gift, not even to make money, but just to go around and advertise and say, I can do this, want me to? I think it can be taken back. And I think that spirit can say, you don't deserve that anymore. We're not going to talk to you. And kind of shut themselves off to you instead of vice versa. So I think there could be a world in which maybe when they were kids, yeah, they were pranking and they were doing these things, but they weren't doing all the stuff that drove them out of the house. And so maybe something did follow them when they moved. And maybe it was something that they were like, whoa, this is not us. And this is like kind of scary and creepy and I don't like it. And so maybe they stopped doing that and they stopped being open to that. But at a time where they were like, oh, shoot, we could do this for a living, But I also think that could be incredibly unreasonable, and that it was always a farce, always. And, they were dealing with some really difficult things. And I don't know.
The alcoholism is really, even for that to be part of it, that
Well, don't you think that would dull something too?
That is absolutely a numbing agent. I mean, alcohol is a tried and true number, in many different ways. This is so interesting. I could talk about this forever. I'm sitting here thinking about, I I lived in an old, oh my gosh, like remodeled church that you've been to my old apartment.
Uh-huh.
It was
Yep.
an old church. And ever since I moved out of there, things that like there were things that happened in there that I was like, okay, this is definitely because of this. Like because of this. I never necessarily felt scared. It was just
Yeah.
different. It was just a different energy.
It had a different energetic footprint.
It did. And also that there was a church on the backside of it. It was like an Orthodox church attached to it, and they would have funerals there all the time. And it was just kind of that whole block was full, and there was actually a funeral home adjacent to it. So there's just so much of that nearby in such close proximity. And it's also just like such an old area. But even just moving from that space to this space that I'm in now, I'm like, oh, it's so obvious that that was something that was going on that I kind of just coexisted with and didn't really challenge, or sometimes I would acknowledge, but I really didn't feel any kind of draw to. I would, practice things, and I do here too, of like more protective measures, but I never felt led to go any further into it because it feels like none of my business. That's how it really feels.
Yeah. I get that. And I think I would be much more likely to believe someone who I sort of kind of stumble upon understanding or realizing maybe has a gift or seems to have a gift, as opposed to someone coming to me and saying, yeah, I can do this thing. If you give me $5, I'll do it.
That's the funny thing is that that's kind of what happened between us. We've stumbled, fumbled, our way through all sorts of things that are just like, wait, what? That happened?
Yeah.
Like, whoa. So it does feel very fumbly. So it does strike me as very like, whenever someone comes with that level of conviction and like specificity, with it, it's like, this feels very curated in my sensation. And I've met people that I find out are gifted in certain ways, whether it's supernatural or not. And it just is a very different energy, like you're saying, to find out about it versus for someone to lead with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or for it to come up, and, for someone to come up to you and be like, hey, this is really weird, but does this mean anything to you? Like that sort of experience is going to hold a lot more weight, in my opinion, than, someone saying, hey, I can do this. Look at me, big flashing lights. And I think, you know what? That just goes into a whole other thing of, I don't think that necessarily all TV psychics are frauds. But I think that, some of those fail compilations are they're so satisfying. But who's to say that they didn't really hear the things that they're saying out loud that are so wrong, and we're just being absolutely punked by spirit?
Right.
Being like, hey, we're not your dancing monkeys, so we're going to make you look like an idiot. Like, I think about that one woman, this was in the 90s, who it was on a talk show, and a woman was very emotional, and because they had never found her son's body, and so they didn't know how he passed, something like that, and or something similar, but she so confidently, abrasively, is like, he's in water, and it was, I think that the actual story was that he had been shot or something, but it was just one of those things of like, whoa, you didn't let me finish, and you're so wrong, and now why would you be willing to put a totally different trauma on me? But I'm not necessarily saying that she doesn't have a gift. I'm saying she asked for that. I don't know.
I had someone share with me recently that it's speculated that this healer, energy worker, crystal, spiritual guide man, I don't remember his exact title or what he called himself, but it was something that I had never heard of. Yeah, probably that. It's some sort of like energetic shaman, basically, is what he marketed himself as. It actually, when I looked at the website, I'll have to pull it back up. I'll send it to you. They work with the like top 1%, and supposedly he does rituals on the grounds. This is so just fascinating. This person does these rituals on these grounds before development, like Whole Foods, for example. He would allegedly, supposedly, go to the site where this Whole Foods is about to be built. Bezos hires him. Hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars a year this man makes doing these rituals, allegedly. And he goes and buries like this series of crystals under the store that is supposed to encourage wealth and attract, money. And he gets paid millions of dollars a year to do that as some sort of energetic worker. He doesn't. And I know this is going to come as the biggest shock ever, but he was a white man.
Well, but this is where we have to point out the correlation that it's not so crazy when you consider the ceremonies of the Ducant. But no cash exchange, right? And obviously not doing it for bajillionaires. But the idea stays the same. The idea that we can do a ritual that will bring something good to you.
Well, there's also what I've heard, a lot of folks who are wealthy, and I've actually heard this firsthand, is that they'll have things like their birth chart read, and they'll have a professional astrologer help them make financial decisions and when to make the financial decisions. And, so I guess it's not that wealth and good luck and fortune can't be part of it, but it does feel like that there's a point where
where's the line where it becomes exploitation?
Exactly. That's what exactly what I was feeling.
Yeah. What's the line before it's like, I can take advantage of you because you have so much money that you will pay for this.
Right.
Versus I am seeking you out because this is my faith.
And I'm not to say that someone is or isn't, who am I to say? So
right, but I think it's interesting, this idea of like, is there a hierarchy? Is there, is someone more talented than someone else if you have the same gift? I guess so. I mean, all singers are talented, but you would think that some are better than others based on your own opinions. And don't know what that was. That was the ghost. But
those are your toes.
Yeah, that was every bone in my body popping. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's exactly, at the end of the day, whether they were or were not capable of any of the things they claimed to be capable of, they sparked an entire movement that still happens today. People still have seances today.
I wonder if they're in that book that I told you about I've been reading. I'll have to go and look and see if they're in there. I'm sure they are. Because he goes all the way back to, okay. I'm only in like the second chapter. Very slowly reading it.
Yeah. But I'm thrilled that you had not heard of them, because I was like, no, I'm not going to get that lucky. She's going to be like, yeah.
No, I haven't. Okay. I really think that you are so much more and have been so much more tapped into the spiritual aspect of things and much more familiar with those kinds of stories than I am or have been, which is just really exciting, because it's truly that this was so enjoyable to even just think about, consider, listen to, and it brings up so many curiosities. And I now am like, where is the line between,
Well, you'll really like next week then, because 2 weeks from now for
our
listeners,
next week.
Because our next week, because we'll really get into the opposition of this entire movement and the very notable key figures that may surprise you. That were really
you said Houdini, and I
charge.
was like, I'm so excited about this. Cool.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. Think
Have
about
a lovely evening, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.